Hello and welcome to Maths with Jacob. This lesson will focus on tessellations. A tessellation occurs when we have a plane shape which is completely covered by smaller interlocking shapes. The smaller shapes fit together neatly and there are no gaps. Some people say that the smaller shapes must be identical. The smaller shapes may or may not be identical, as we can see by the following pictures. The three shapes to the left show examples where the smaller shapes are identical. So in other words, these are the larger shapes here, but each small shape is exactly the same. The above tessellated shape is a perfect example showing how the smaller shapes are identical in shape and size. So there's another example where the shapes are identical. These could be floor tiles, for example. Smaller shapes are not identical. If you focus on the smaller pieces which are coloured differently, you can see that the shapes are not identical. For example, here we've got a square, and here we've got triangle, and here we've got something that looks like a diamond. That's a simple explanation of what that is. There's a more technical name for it. We'll just call it a diamond for the time being. The above picture shows an excellent example of a tessellation where the smaller shapes are not identical. Here's a six-sided shape and there's a square, for example. Tessellations in real life. One of the wonders of nature is the picture of the honeycomb above. It shows a great example of tessellations in nature, where each of the small shapes is a hexagon. This is an excellent example of a tessellation. The tabletop is very attractively designed with a very creative pattern. The chessboard is a perfect example of a tessellation in real life. And you've got all these little squares. When a jigsaw puzzle is completed, it is a great example of a tessellation. And you can see that the smaller shapes are not the same, but there are no gaps when the picture is completed. So this video has introduced you to the idea of a tessellation, and we've seen that the smaller shapes can have exactly the same shape and size, or they can be different.